really want to make clear what I feel about Muji and why I want to clarify it. First of all, in in 2014, I came across by chance through a Muji video, and I immediately noticed that my whole intuition, and I have very high intuition. I'm double Cancer, Cancer Sun sign, Cancer ascendant, and I have abilities to feel things that others don't. And I could feel that there was some authenticity that I couldn't really put my finger on. I didn't really at that time understand what Muji was talking about. So I just knew that I keep listening and I wanted to listen and I understood there is something that I can't put my finger on that is there, but I couldn't really understand what. And that also shows you how high my intuition is, because I knew that there was something that I couldn't put my hands on, that I couldn't really say what it is. And then from that point on, I watched Muji for a whole 1 year, 1 to 2 hours per day. Sometimes a half an hour, sometimes 1 hour, sometimes 2 hours, but pretty much almost every day for a whole year. And somebody in the comments said Muji is a fraud. And I'll tell you exactly what happened after this 1 year of listening to Muji every day. I then came home from something else, I don't remember, and I saw another video from him, and suddenly there was this what I call kickback. It's the realization that consciousness is actually watching the video and not some mental construct or some mind or some mental, it was just a realization. I'm consciousness, and consciousness is watching this, and consciousness is watching the body, and consciousness is aware of everything, and consciousness is it was suddenly this is why I call it kickback, because it's almost like, when you're watching a theater or you're watching a movie, you get so involved in the movie that sometimes you think you're in the movie. And the kickback is basically when you recognize the moment when the movie's off, or when you, let's say, something else comes up during the movie, and or it gets a little bit boring in the movie, and suddenly you get this realization, oh my god, I was like in the movie. When I think this is the best analogy. When you're in the movie theater and everything is dark and all your attention is to the movie, you're super concentrated on the movie that you sometimes feel like you're in the movie, and you fall like in this trance where you're like just in the movie, which is most movies, basically, if they're good. And then suddenly you recognize, oh, it's like, oh, I was like, I fell into the movie, but, I'm not the movie. And it happens quite often, even when the movies then shut off. And and this is how awakening really is. It's like, you think you're your thoughts, you think you're that person, you think you are, and then suddenly the kickback happens and you're like, oh. And the thing is just that the movie is super long. Instead of, being the movie 1 or 2 or 3 hours, you literally have a whole lifetime of a movie. You have like 30, 40, 50, 60 years. Maybe you never waken up, so you have 80, 90 years of a movie, and you didn't even realize that you're watching a movie all the time. You're literally not in this reality. You're just observing that reality, kind of like a movie. It's absolutely insane. Like, um, but this is what it is, and this is why Muji is not a fraud, because he's pointing to that so often and over and over and over and over and over again, until the awakening happens. But it doesn't happen for everyone. And even the fact that it took a whole year listening to Muji every day shows how involved I was with the movie of the thoughts, how involved I was with this movie of the illusion of this Maya, this 3D world. And I can tell you exactly what I was doing at that time. I was like interested, in the stock market. I was super involved in that. I was involved, in doing websites. I was super identified with everything. I was constantly seeking women on dating sites, constantly. And I would enjoy, shortly, if I met one and we had, sex. And this was a constant cycle of these few things. and and working out and bodybuilding and stuff. And then after awakening, like a week after awakening, I realized, oh my god, I'm not even searching for women anymore. I was like centered in myself, you could say, or I was with myself, with my true self. And a lot of crying then started to happen because old stuff was surfacing, like I talk about a lot of these things. And uh and then the massages started happening. And the again, I say this again because of the toxic comment that I received about my massages, because I will receive probably a lot of toxic comments around massaging women from men who are extremely jealous, obviously. um that I came to this through the awakening. It wasn't an ego decision, it was an awakening message. This is this is also the intuition, the heart intuition. I call this heart intuition, is when you're so open that the message from over the crown chakra goes downwards into your heart and guides you, rather than being guided by the lower chakras. But because most men and most people in general, even women, live from the lower three chakras, they assume that anything you do is also happening from the lower chakras rather than being guided by a higher chakra. And true healers, and true spiritual people are guided by what's being said from above, not from below. That's a big difference. And the only way to get these messages from above is sitting in absolute silence. There's no other way, because that's the only time your energy system truly completely opens up. Otherwise, it gets mixed with thoughts, with lower chakra impulses, and all of this stuff. So Muji is definitely not a fraud in the sense like he's pointing to something which is an absolute extremely high truth. Or like he says sometimes, or other people say, it's the uh the king of spirituality is non-duality, literally the true awakening. Because everything changes after that. Materialism changes, your desires change, your viewpoint on life changes, everything changes with awakening. There's nothing left unturned with awakening. And without Muji, in this lifetime, I wouldn't have had awakening. It's just an absolute fact. And I'm here to attest to the fact that spiritual awakening does exist, and it is the realization that you're not your thoughts, and to the point where you can just be completely silent and just aware of what is without thinking, because you're not less if you don't think. In fact, you're actually more of your true self, because it's not overshadowed by anything else. So yeah, I want to definitely say that Muji is not a fraud and he's not fake. um What I'd say though, added to that, he's also just a human in the same time. While he's awakened, he's also a human. That means he might do things as a human that you don't agree with. He eats meat. He had lots of sex with his student. He has like concubines around him. Basically, he cheated on a girlfriend. Uh, so you be the judge of that. But awakening is definitely real. So, and a lot of people say, that he's not as centered, a lot of times as people think he should be, all of these things. So, but some things are like, for example, I remember there was a satsang. I saw a lot of Muji videos, especially the older ones. I know pretty much all of them, especially the older ones. When they started releasing videos every day, and it became the invitation, because that happened a little bit later, then I just stopped watching. But or I just sometimes I watch, but not as often. But when it was less videos and it was back then, it was I watched all of them. And I remember one satsang in Portugal where, by the way, I believe Ganga Mira is a bigger fraud than Muji. To be quite honest, I don't think she's truly awakened in a way. Um. Anyways, so because I visited her twice, Ganga Mira, in Al Jazur. But anyway, so yeah, he was doing satsang in Portugal, and someone was walking over the of the garden where they grow, salads and food and shit. And he kind of said, "Hey, somebody tell him that he's not supposed to go there over the, where food is growing." And because he saw it while he was doing satsang. And I think, and this is what he said at some point, and I completely agree, that the more people, this is why I would never start a community this kind of in this kind of way, like his sangha. It's way too complicated, because the more people you get together, the more they're going to be in their ego. Logically, somebody is not going to be awakened. The more people to get together is just natural. And some people think they're awakened or not fully awakened. They can rest in silence, but maybe not. And then it bounce back into thoughts and all of this kind of stuff. And so you're gonna have problems in a community. And then he said, well, you need rules. The bigger the community, the more you need rules, logically. And otherwise the community doesn't work. And I noticed with whatever community exists, whether it's with Osho, Muji, whoever, that there's always enough people who are not truly awakened, and those become a problem. And then the community somehow falls apart if there's no one to constantly watch over them. And I think the same would happen with the Muji Sangha. There's some strange people there as well, and I think that if Muji were to die, the Sangha would completely fall apart, and maybe two or three people would be left in the end. It's just these things just don't work. So it should be, I think, an awakened being, the ideal way to live is just rest in awareness and not create these kind of communities and stuff. It's my opinion. And that's also, the community is also how everything then happened. All these stories about the sexual stories and all of this stuff. The taking advantage sexually. There was some stuff that was talked about like that. And people who left that place talked about it like that. It's not me saying it, it's others. And and I think that happens when you start to bring all these people together, because there's three forces in life. I'm going to stop with that, but there's three forces in life. One is procreation, the other is survival, and the other is consciousness, in which everything is observed. In consciousness, even procreation, survival are observed. But unless you're totally awakened and enlightened to the self, you're always mixing it with survival and procreation, and that just creates the dynamic as anywhere else in life, and becomes problematic.